will also share the PDF once the complete course is done. I will share the complete PPT's PDF with you as a reference. You can use it in future. So let's start. So first of all, when we come to SQL or SQL, what basically SQL is or it stands for? It stands for a structured query language. Means any query, I'm just writing a query, it is just a select query. So the basic purpose of structured query language is that entire SQL is just a select query. If you know how to write a select query, that means you know entire SQL, entire SQL. There is no more thing other than a select query in SQL. And it's just a query language. It is a structured query language. Everything in this that query formation is totally structured, and it is a language in itself. And it is designed to manage a relational database management system. Why relational? Now, coming on to you have also used Access database. That's correct. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I haven't used the Excel.
So in Access database, it is not relational. Means what do you mean by relational or that? Means there if there are two entities or two tables. For example, if there is an employee entity and if there is a customer entity, then there might be a relation between the two logically, but it is not defined in the database. What is database will be covering in a minute, but it will not be defined. There is no relation between the two entities in the system. So those are independent of themselves. If I want to write a if I want to insert any data in any one of the entity, and if I, for example, if I try to violate the constraint that though there is a relation between the customer, that there is a one-to-one relationship and a customer must also exist for an employee or something like that, then those relations will not be checked while you are inserting any entity. So if I go on further, these are just theory part. So I will not be covering in much depth. You can view it later. However, the major part is that there is a theory behind this. That the original term was that it was first called as SEQUEL, shortcut for SQL English Query Language, and this was developed for a product called System R, and this was later renamed to SQL because of some trademark dispute. And this was used for some standards, ANSI standards and ISO standards. What are ANSI and ISO standards? ANSI and ISO standards, these are standards of a software. Any software or any code which we are writing has to follow these standards to get it copyrighted and get it proper as a defined as a software. So in these standards there was some trademark dispute. Because of it, SQL, SEQUEL, was changed to SQL.
Okay.
Then I was talking of relational model. What is relational model? If you go in the layman terms, the relational model is that any two entities are there. Maybe it's employee entity, orders entity, HR entity. So there are relation between the entities, and this relation is called relational model. If you can express those relations in the database itself, in the system itself, if you can, by looking on the system, if you can tell, okay, by looking in the system I can analyze this, there is relation between these two entities, and if this is present, then this will has to be present, otherwise there will be no data for the AA also. For example, if there is a entity and there is a B entity, and if I say if A entity is present, then B entity must be there, must be at least one B entity for every A entity. So by looking at the system I can tell that relationship between, and I can tell that if the data is here in the A entity, then I will also get the data in B entity. Or if there is an employee, there must be an HR. There is an HR, there must be an employee. Any relation if we can think of, then the relational model can be defined looking at the system only. And this is the
Your
main
entity is stable, right?
entity stable. Here entity is stable. I'm just talking in layman terms because we haven't touched table right now. And I'm assuming that you are learning from scratch. So I'm just using the word entity right now. However, in SQL terms, entity is stable here only.
Okay.
So in if you come to normalization, So there are many rules for normalization. These are basic theories I have just included so that whenever you will in future you want to reference, you can go through these terms, because these are mostly asked in interviews. If you want to clear interviews, they will not simply ask you, okay, give me a query. They will start with these things. What is a relational model? What is the difference between Access database and SQL database? Okay, what is 1NF? What is 2NF? What is 3NF? Who was called? So they will ask with these terms first, and if you answer these terms correctly, then only they will go to practicals. They will definitely ask one or two questions from this theory. So I've just included this theory.
Mm.
So normalization rules are basically whenever we are creating any tables, whenever we are creating any entities in the database, it has to follow certain rules. Those rules were defined by Boise code, and these rules are called Boise code rules. So these are the normalization forms. These are 1NF, 2NF, and 3NF. There are also other normalization forms like 4NF and Boise code normal form. So these are advanced rules. However, 1NF, 2NF, and 3NF is the major rules which every system definitely follows. The 1NF is not 1NF is nothing but there should be means every entity rows which we create, and every entity data which there is, it should be atomic. The attribute should be atomic. This means that if I'm saying that there is an employee ID column or there is an employee name, by employee name I means one particular only one attribute, so that any tuples in the rows must be unique. Any rows, if I'm saying that there is an employee table and I have employee ID EMP 101, then I said it for the employee 101, there is only one row in that table. There cannot be two rows for the same entity.
Mm.
And if there are two rows, then that is a different thing, because then there is a relation between one to many and one to many relationship between. But at the lowest level, there must be one table at least where there is only one row for one entity. That is employee 101, EMP 101. There is only one row for that, and that is the master table basically. So, and the second normal form means there is a first normal form is applied, and the data must meet the first normal form. Other rule that relationship between non-key and candidate key attribute. For every candidate key, every non-key attribute has to be fully functionally dependent on the entire candidate key. So coming on to what is candidate key. So in a table, I say that an employee has an employee ID. Okay. Now an employee can also have a Aadhaar card number. That Aadhaar card number is also a unique thing, because no two employees can have the different same Aadhaar card number. So even I can I uniquely identify any employee on the basis of Aadhaar card number, but there is also employee ID. So it means I can use any of these two as my primary key, my unique key which can define the entire row. So if I'm so these two are nothing but these two are probable candidate keys. Means candidate key can be primary key, means but every candidate key is not a primary key. Every primary key is a candidate key. So there can be 2 to 3 candidate keys, out of which any one is voluntarily chosen as a primary key, and once that is defined as a primary key, that is used throughout the system. Then we come on to third normal forms. In third normal form, this rule basically means that all non-key attributes must be mutually independent. In other words, one non-key attribute cannot be dependent on another non-key attribute. That is, if there is a non-key attribute, any column which is not a key, so it cannot be dependent on another non-key attribute. Means it should be dependent on only a primary key or a candidate key which is a primary key. So it should not be dependent on any other key. For example, if I don't have, if I define if I have an employee ID and employee name and last name, I have first name and I have last name, then I say that okay, my last name entity is dependent on first name. No, it is not dependent on first name. I cannot say that my last name attribute is dependent on the primary key, though first name and last name are related to each other. but while identifying any last name of any employee, I will refer the primary key and not the first name.
Okay.
So these are normal forms. These are just a overview of normal forms, which we will cover in depth when we'll be creating the tables and all this. So we'll practically go with an example, and we'll use the same example throughout the application, so that you are comfortable on the same table and querying the same table. And coming on to online transaction processing, so there are many types of transactions going in any system. So one type of transaction is that there are customers logging onto system, customer are creating records, customer are deleting records, and there means data is regularly, in every fraction of seconds, data is getting manipulated. There is insert happening, there is update happening, there is delete happening. So that type of system, if I am working on that type of system, that type of data, it will be called online transaction processing. I am doing some online transaction processing. And if I'm using a data for reporting purpose, means all the data, for example, my 7 days of data I have created, and all those 7 days of data I have now replicated in another system, so that my analyst can analyze the trend, how all this data is reflected, how many customers have logged into the system, how many customers have created any how many customers have placed any order in any day. So all this data goes to data warehouse. So this data warehouse is a concept where the data is replicated in every interval of time. The data is getting replicated from the online transaction processing system, that is OLTP, to the data warehouse, DW, online processing system, to the data warehouse. The data is getting replicated for future analysis purpose. Now the mining, which you are most interested, so that comes after this. So after the database warehouse has been designed, then there is a business intelligent semantic model. This is the Microsoft latest model for the BI stack of application. BI means business intelligence. And this architecture include some layers, like there is a data model, there are some logics and queries, there is a data access systems, all these things. This provides the user with the data mining tools. So then the user, according using this model, this is just a model of data mining, business intelligence semantic. This is just a model. In this model, the whole data mining concept is based, that we can use this model to basically write the data mining algorithms, data mining queries, data mining business logics, and all these things. Any questions still here?
So BI is a kind of implementation of data mining, right?
BI is not an implementation kind of a thing. Business intelligence semantic model is a implementation model, and BI is a intelligence kind of a system. So if I talk of Power BI, it is an application. So Power BI does what? It uses this model, BISM, and it provides data mining capabilities by providing an interface from which user can write business logics and queries.
Okay.
And use the data as per the access. Using the data models. Data models means the tables are there. They can select the columns and all those things in the Power BI, and they can access those systems according to their business logic, and they can write their own queries. So this is just a model which is implemented in Power BI. Power BI is the best tool as I have used till now. So I was talking of that. Does this answer your question?
Yeah. So like there are various tools which are built using BISM model.
Yes.
And these models, I mean, these models actually do data mining, right?
Yes, yes. These models helps in data mining, and data mining is done by the user itself.
Okay.
And in the
Got it,
meantime, and they can also use some tools like SSIS, SSAS, SSRS,
Okay.
by which they can, in SSAS, they can write algorithms, and in the SSRS they can probably get the complete report of the trend and all these things. There are also some inbuilt algorithms by which they can get the trends and all these things. So these are more in-depth tools which can be used for the data mining.
Okay. Yeah, I get it.
Okay, so coming on to SQL Server architecture. So architecture is this is if you look on the theory, it looks too confusing, but I will tell you in a short thing that it is just ABC. I will go with the lower level. C is a cloud flavor. B is the box. Box means the system. So it is your own the it means this SQL server which is in your system. This is called the box. Cloud is basically the Azure part, and appliance is the person who is fitting the who is providing you the software or hardware. So this is just the architecture of SQL Server. These are called ABC flavors of SQL Server. This is the most common question which is asked in any of the interviews. What do you mean by ABC of SQL Server? So you just have to answer in a short, which I said you just now. That A means the person who is providing me the hardware or software. Box is nothing but my system, and C is the cloud, which is the latest invention that SQL database can also be hosted on Azure, and I can use it. It can also be hosted on AWS or like this, from where I can use it in my system. And the actual database does not reside actually on my system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now I will come to some actual practical parts I would like to show you. If I this is a this is the my database which I was working. I will not go into this, but there are in the database you can see there are system databases, and there you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4 system databases. So
Mm-hmm.
if we go on to master, model, MSDB and TempDB, so if you can explore it, there are many tables. These are system databases. So these you don't have to actually work on these tables, but these are interview asked questions. What is a system database, or what do you mean by master DB? What do you mean by TempDB? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what is MSDB used for? So these type of interviewers are very, if an interviewer wants to have an in-depth knowledge, they will definitely go through these questions initially to test your working knowledge.
So
So
these are created when we do our actual database.
So these are tables. These are created when you install the SQL Server.
Okay.
So I will go to what these tables are, why these are created. So
Mm-hmm.
coming on to my presentation, I was just showing you where we can see these tables. So if
Mm-hmm.
whenever you start any SQL Server instance, even in your system, if you are opening your SQL Server, you can see that there are system databases folder, and you can navigate to that, and you can see that there are you can see 1, 2, you can see there 4, but I have mentioned it here 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, this TempDB, MSDB, resource and model, and master. I have mentioned 5 because resource is hidden database. It is not viewable. So I will go through one by one. First of all, master database. Master database holds instance-wide metadata information. Means all about whatever databases are there, how many databases are you have created, how many users are there, all the information, what is the configuration of the SQL server. For example, when you are creating the SQL server, installing the SQL server, you must have mentioned some controller name, you must have mentioned where the database should reside, where the SQL server should be installed. All those information are there in the master database.
Mm-hmm.
This holds the overall your SQL Server database information. Then comes the resource database. Resource database is hidden. It is only for read-only database. It holds the definition of system objects. Now, what are system objects? System objects and system schema. So, system objects means if there is a table, is if there is a table in your system, or if there is a procedure in your system, that is called a system object. So this resource DB holds information about complete all the databases objects which are there in your SQL Server instance. It has the data of all those things. So whenever you create or drop, this is accordingly updated in the
Okay.
background, so that the SQL Server is aware whatever you have there in your SQL Server box.
Hmm.
So the model database uses a template for new databases. Okay, so whenever you create any new database, for example, let me go through there and let me create a new database which we will be using for our purpose. So I am going here and I am creating a new database. I am giving a default name for the database. Default tutorial. Is there any space in between? No. Okay. So I am creating. Okay. And also note, we will discuss this later. Just okay, let's us discuss, because this is the very next topic which we wanted to discuss. So when we are creating any database, there are two types of files created.
Hmm.
One is an, if you go to the name of this file, you can see one is an MDF file name. It is not reflecting the name here. So this one is an MDB file, and other one is a LDF file, MDF file and LDF file. So
Okay.
in this database tutorial MDF file, what is this? This will hold the main data of your application, whatever data you want to insert, delete, or create, update. Those data will actually reside in this MDF file, and this is a log file. This log file is why this is used for. This log file is used for taking the transaction snapshots. Whatever the database you are doing, there is an equivalent log created. For example, if you are creating any temporary tables, those are also created a log in the log LDF file. And this LDF file, whenever there is an online transaction, for example, if you want to update and write an update query, so the log will be created first, then those update transaction will be actually affect the uh, database tutorial MDF file. So
Oh.
this logs actually grow in size. But however, once the database is actually created, the data is updated, so we don't need the log files. So as a maintenance activity, the log files are always truncated. Always means minimized, again compressed. They are so these logs can be truncated. There is a command to truncate the logs. So these logs are truncated after every 1 or 2 weeks, so that it again amounts to 1 KB or 2 KB, because these logs can grow in size up to 4 GB, 5 GB in actual scenario.
Okay. Hmm.
We don't need these logs.
Right.
Once the data is actually created, we have taken the database backup, we actually don't need these logs.
Hmm.
And if you go to options, you can also see that there are pretty much options for this, which definitely will not go into deep, but I'm just showing you there is a compatible level. If you want to use this SQL Server database with previous versions of SQL Server also,
Hmm.
there are file groups. If you want to add any more file group other than primary, so I will just create OK. So this I have created the database, but then you can see that there are many things which is created by default. Database
Hmm.
diagrams, obviously there is nothing right now. If you go to tables, you can see that there is a system tables,
Hmm.
nothing, file tables, but this folder structure is created. Graph
Yeah.
tables, there is nothing. If you go to views, you can see that there are no views, but system views are there. So system views are there. There are all views. There are allocation units. there is a column sys dot columns. So what is sys dot columns, or you can also find sys dot tables here. If you because we'll be covering this terminology, so I'm showing you these things. So if you go
Hmm.
to RST, you can find sys dot tables also, sys dot tables. So these,
Hmm.
so what are these things? These are created by default. These are views, sys dot tables. So sys dot table is a view. Now if I want to just let me write a query. So this is just a database I've newly created. So definitely there are no tables right now here. So what are views we'll be covering later, but let's now just go with the flow. So if
Hmm.
I write here select star from sys dot tables. So you can see the color has been changed to showing that this is a reserved keyword.
Hmm.
So I found that there is no tables created right now, but there is a structure,
So,
name, object
hmm.
ID, principal ID. So that is just a view, but there is a system defined columns for that. That any table which I will create will have following
Hmm.
properties.
Yeah.
That it will have a object ID, because every table I mentioned is a object. It
Hmm.
will have a schema ID, it will have a parent object ID, it will have a type, it will have a create date, it will have a modify date. So if I want to know that okay, who has modified my table, I want to know that my table, someone has modified the structure of my table. So I can go to sys.tables and I can see the modified date, and I can be sure that someone has modified my table on this date.
Hmm.
So these are used for log purpose. So this can be a pretty good question in your interview. How can I know that someone has modified my table or not in the past 2 weeks? So you have to answer that I can go to sys.tables and I can check
Hmm.
the modified date. I can give a date query, something like between this date to this date, whether it has been modified or not. And if the answer is yes, then definitely someone has modified it. So
Hmm.
so we were talking of this model database. So this model database is used as a template for every new database. Whatever templates we were seeing, this is created from this model database.
Hmm.
Then comes TempDB. So basically TempDB is used for temporary temporary kind of storing. There is a concept of temporary tables in SQL Server. So whenever we create those temporary tables in our procedures, so those temporary data is stored in TempDB, and when the query processing is completed, those temporary tables are removed from the TempDB. And if
Hmm.
in case if a transaction is not 100% properly completed, then that might reside on TempDB as well. So ideally what you do used to do with logdb, you also have to for the LDF file, what you do, so the same you have to do for TempDB also, to clear the unused temporary tables. So temporary tables definitely we'll touch later on, what is temporary tables and how it is executed. But right now, just for now, understand that if you are creating temporary tables, it is stored in TempDB
Hmm.
till its processing is 100% completed and it is dropped from there, or the query session itself is closed.
Yeah.
Then comes MSDB database. So there are many automation tools used in the SQL Server. For example, if I have a job to execute, I want to execute any, for example, just take that I want to shrink the TempDB, or I want to shrink the logDB for every DB. So I've written a code, but I want that it should be executed in off business hours. So I can write a job, and that job execution will depend on MSDB. So MSDB will store all the information of any jobs or agents which I have created, and it will help in executing those jobs.
Mm, okay, so is it like automating queries?
No, so MSDB is a database which stored the information of all the SQL Server agent details. Now, what is SQL Server agent? SQL Server agent is something which hold all the information of jobs or monitors, or any backups which we are taking. So, for example, you are taking a backup of a database. So,
Hmm.
if you are taking a backup of any database, so those information is stored in MSDB.
Okay.
And coming on to jobs, if you want to execute any particular job, that like my backup of database should execute in every 12 a.m. IST or 12 a.m. EST. So those information which I am creating any job, that every 12 a.m. IST this job has to be executed, is stored in MSDB, and from there it gathers the information. Okay, I have to run this job every at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And
So it can be used to schedule.
yes,
Okay.
so that is used to schedule the jobs and all these things. So this is not actually, you are not working on MSDB, you are creating a simple job agent, but those informations are stored in MSDB.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this information you don't get in any books or in general, but anyone who has practically worked on these things, so they can be able to properly tell you that these are the system database users. And definitely we have discussed this MDF LDF file. There is another NDF file also, means non-primary file, basically non-master database file. So NDF file is not basically used. Even if question comes, it will ask for MDF LDF only. NDF is just a third extension. I've written it. If you want to just go through it, you can go through it in the Google resource or something like that. So NDF file is basically is just not the master data file, but additional file group which you have created. I showed you the file group option. So from there, whatever other additional .ldf .df files you have created is called NDF file.
Okay.
And schemas and objects we have already discussed. And schemas is basically what what I was showing you in sys.tables. So that is called the schema. So that is the schema. For example, if I'm creating a table, what will be its schema? Its schema will be employee ID, name, first name, last name, salary. This is a schema of the object, and object is employee table.
Okay.
Any questions, Sanjana?
I mean, on the previous slide, it was written and schemas contain objects. So objects means the the whole table, or it is just one entity in a table.
So object is the table, not the entity inside the table. A table is an object, and the procedure is an object, a view is an object, but the inside things, those are called the schema definitions. Schema definitions, those are the schema of the object.
Okay.
So table is an object. Inside table will not tell that if there is any row or column, will not say that this is an object. We'll say that this is a row or this is a data of the object. Okay, so this was the pretty much basic theories which is asked in every of the question answers. Other than this, you don't need to know any theoretical part which can be asked in interviews or any of the working knowledge which you are trying to do any. So we'll now jump on to practicals. So I will share the PDF so that you can go through this theory in deep, and you can also in terms search in Google or Wikipedia to get more details about the theoretical parts. So first of all, we have created already the database. Now let's us create any table. So I will create this table with employee ID, first name, last name, hire date, manager ID, SSN, and salary. Okay, and you want to add a primary key. Okay, so let's go to SQL Server, and this is the syntax of create table. Create table.
Should I do it simultaneously, or?
Your voice is not audible clearly.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I mean, should I do it on my system as well, or should I just pay attention right now and then try it on my own later?
Right now you just pay attention.
Okay.
And you can later on, I will share the PDF after every session. so that you can
Uh-huh.
try it out, and whatever
Okay.
queries you have, you can come up with the next session,
Okay, sure.
so that we don't lose the track. And
Yes, yes.
you can definitely practice on as long as you need, and whatever queries are there, we'll first cover up those in the next session before starting the next session, then we'll continue our with the further studies.
Okay, okay. Sure.
So I will create a template table employees, and then this is the opening and closing bracket. Then there is a EMP ID. EMP ID I will take as varchar. Varchar. We'll covering these data types in coming times. Right now, just assume that it is an the type of a data type which we are using. We'll definitely be covering in depth what is a varchar, what is a char, and all these things. But right now, I just want to go with the syntax. So EMP ID varchar, and let's say it is not null, and name, which is again a varchar 100, and a salary. Salary is, let's say, integer. Now I have created this employee table. So just give me a sec. So this should be like this. Hmm. So in this employee, I've used the create table employees. Create table employees. Employees is the name of the employee table which will be created with three columns. One is employee ID, other is name, which is a variable character of 100. Means there can be 100 characters in the name, there can be less than 100 characters also, and will take the amount variably. It will take the disk space according to the name I have provided in the data.
Okay.
Then it is a salary, it is an integer data type. Now I haven't defined any primary key here. So there are two ways of defining a primary key. First of all, I can write here primary key. So if I do this, then this EMP ID will be a primary key. Other than that, I can also do something like this: alter table dbo.employees, add constant, the name of the constant which you are adding, and primary key is the EMP ID. So constant means basically you are adding a restriction that this is a primary key and this is the name of the restriction which you are adding. So there can be many restrictions which you can add in any table, of which primary key is one of them. So you are altering the table definition, you are adding a restriction with a unique name, and you are adding that this restriction is nothing but a primary key on the column employee ID. This command can be used if you are not defining a primary key at the time of creation of employee table. For example, if you just want to create a table which does not have a primary key is called a heap table. And if you have defined a heap table at the initial start, and later on you come to conclusion that okay, I need to have a primary key, then you can alter that table and you can create a primary key. So I am just creating a simple table here, and I am executing it. So this table has been completed. Now if I come to tables and I refresh it, I can see that there is a dbo.employee table created. Now this employee is an object and dbo is a schema. This schema is associated with the employees table. So because of this schema, I can see these columns, keys, constants, triggers, indexes, and statistics. Because the schema is DBO and the object is employees. So how many columns it has? It has employee ID column. Let me uh, just expand this one. So this is a employee ID, which is a primary key. Then there is a name, which is a varchar. Then there is a salary, which is an int, this can be null, but this is not null. Though I haven't specified any constant here that this is not null, but a primary key by default is not null.
Hmm.
A primary key by default is not null. So
Hmm.
there is a employee ID, name and salary. If we check on the constants, right now it does not have any constant. Index must be there, one index, that this is a primary key index
Primary.
and
Hmm.
this is a clustered index. We'll cover this in later, but there is an index which is a primary key index, and these are the three columns of which this is represented by a key. So this key means this is a primary key, and this is a general column. Now I can also add a unique constant. For example, this is not a primary key, but this column must have unique data in it. And if I am specifying a unique key, I will come to that is much later part, but I'm just mentioning it for the purpose that unique can have one null value also. However, primary key cannot have any null value.
Okay.
I will cover null part in depth later after covering joins and all this thing, so that will be much more clear. But just to mention here that unique can have one null key, one null data, but
Hmm.
primary key cannot have any null data within its complete data,
Hmm.
complete table data. It cannot have any null variable. So this is the major difference between primary key and unique key. That unique key can have one null data, but primary cannot have one any null data. And for
Hmm.
primary key, an index is created by default. For unique key, that index is also created, but that is non-clustered.
Hmm.
So this is just for mentioning. If you don't get it, just don't worry about it. We'll cover this in depth later. I just mentioned it
Oh.
as you know as SQL already, so you will be
Hmm.
aware about it. So this is then comes foreign key. So I whenever defining any table, let's suppose if I'm creating a table and orders now, and I have mentioned order ID not null, then primary key is order ID, then I can mention a foreign key also similarly using the reference of employee table. For
Hmm.
I can alter table. So let's create a order table and let's enter a reference of the employee ID also. Create.
I just had a doubt in this employees table. Like we wrote name in square brackets. What was that square bracket for?
Square bracket.
Name, the column name.
Ha. So if there is a, for example, if name is a reserved word because this is coming in blue color, so
Oh.
many a times for any columns which is a reserved word, for example, I cannot use plan also here. If I want to write plan, it is a reserved
Hmm.
word. So for these type
Hmm.
of words I have used this square bracket so that it is,
Okay.
so SQL would assume that this is only for this table and not,
Hmm.
I'm not using the reserved word.
Reservoir. Okay. Okay. Get it. Get it.
So I'm creating a orders. In this order, I will have a primary key order ID. Order ID. Order ID is actually creating a primary key on varchar column is never a good practice. But since this is just a demo, so we are doing
Hmm.
order ID. Order name. Order name is again varchar 100, and I'm using a equivalent column name EMP ID, which should be equal to the data type which I have defined in the employee table.
Hmm.
So I am using this as, now at the time of creating this table, I am not specifying that this is a foreign key, but I will
Hmm.
alter the table now. So I will show you how this relationship exists and what happens post creation of the employee relationship. So I'm executing this table, and now if I refresh the tables, I can see that in this
Hmm.
order table there is a column order ID, similarly PK, EMP name, but this employee ID, if I try to just view this properties or something like that, I don't see that there is any foreign key associated with this table. Or if I try to just take the dependency, if I try to see dependency of this table, I see that there is no dependency of this table. So what happens? This is only order table. Now let me use the definition alter table add constant foreign key. Alter table orders add constant fk. You can give any name to this, that is not an
Hmm.
issue. Fk emp order. So if I try to execute this command, and let's see what happens in the dependency. So this I have executed. Now let me refresh the tables once again, and let me go to orders, keys. So I can see that there is a different
Hmm.
kind of symbol. Okay, let's first go to the columns. We'll look at the keys later. So here I can see different kind of symbol in EMP ID, and there is a FK symbol associated with this. Now I can also see that there are two keys here, candidate keys, which we are talking about. So
Hmm.
this is the primary key candidate key, and this is not a candidate key, but this is a foreign key, and this is also one of the keys. Key definition, there are primary key, candidate key, foreign key. So this is also foreign key is also one of the type of keys. So I can see that there is a foreign key. If I go to constant, there is none. If I go to triggers, there is none. Index, I have a primary key. So
Hmm.
now if I try to go to this orders and I check the view dependencies, object on which order depends. Now I can see that order depends on employees.
Hmm.
So for creating the order data, I must need employees table also. So this is what is called RDBMS,
Hmm. Really.
Relational Database Management System. This SQL provides you, and this is where it is different from other databases which are in the market. This
Hmm.
is an RDBMS. So there are relation between two tables. One table is dependent on other table, and object that depends on orders, there is none. Because
Okay. So no
bec-
table has a
uh,
foreign key from.
because employee I've referenced in order, but I haven't
Hmm.
referenced order in any of the one.
Hmm. Hmm.
You got this one?
Yes. Yes. I understood.
Uh, and this syntax you are clear or not about the alter table add constant? Ask me
Yes. Yes.
in case you have any difficulties here.
No.
I'm
So
just,
here instead of foreign key, if we can write different constants like
yes,
primary
yes,
key or
yes. You can
whatever.
write primary key also. Add constant. You can write primary key EMP ID. So this will
Huh.
you don't need to use the references then. So you,
Yeah.
so you can create the, so this is alter table orders, add constant pk order id or whatever name you want to give, and then that will be primary key order id. So that will create
Yeah.
the, so
Yeah.
if you'll practice these commands, you will have a strong hold on these type of commands. What people usually do, even I used to do at the initial start of my career, what I used to do, I used to go to internet. I'm just telling you for now because it will be handy for you sometime. So if I want to write, I will write alter alter table SQL server add foreign key. So I get this alter table, and you can get this in any of the W3 school or some kind of those tutorials. You can get this, and
Tutorial
and
files.
you can see the command. So this is the command you will get. Okay, alter table add foreign key references this. So people generally copy this, they change the column name, and but that is not a good practice because you should know these commands by heart. Anyways, if you don't remember, you have an option. You can go, Google has everything. So even if you don't remember it, you can just copy the syntax and you can change the definition. So I will tell you the tricks also which you can use. And this is a default constant and check constant. Check constant, okay. I will touch the check constant right now. So what is check constant? Add constant, check employees, check salary. Okay. So one of the constant, if I want to add in this employee table. So let's say I want to add a constant at alter table. First of all, alter table employees add constant, let's say check salary, and this will be a check SALARY salary greater than 10. That's all the syntax, I think. Yes. So now if I execute this, it has added. Now let me see if there are any changes in the table definition. We can see if there are any constants added or not, or something like that. Employee, if I go to columns, salary, there is no changes. Any key, no. Any constant, yes. So there is a constant which is check salary, which we created just now. So if you want to see this, you can go to script, create to new query editor window. You can just check what is the constant. So this is the constant alter table employees with check constant check salary greater than 10, which is what we created. So what this constant will do? Now let's suppose I want to insert a record in employee table, and I will use a simple insert command, insert into employees. I will have to provide the column name. Column name is EMPID. Then there is a name and there is a salary. So whenever you are writing any query, just make it a practice that whatever the keywords are, basically the reserved keywords, that you write in capital letters. The table name which you are writing, the first letter should be capital, rest should be small. And all the definitions whichever query you are writing, this should be in a different lines. For example, you have written insert into employees in one line, it becomes more readable. Then there are column names, and then you write the select. So select, I will use name is EMP ID is, let's say, since it's a varchar, I will have to include in quotes. Let's say EMP 101. Then name is let's use a proper data so that in future when we are doing the queries, we'll be able to see the actual data in it.
Hmm.
And the salary is, let's say I write it 1000. Okay, select. I cannot use this brackets here in select. So if I try to insert this, it will be inserted definitely. Now, what if I write here EMP2 and I write this as, let's say, Saurabh Mittal, and I enter it as 9. Now
Hmm.
see what happens. There is a conflict. The
Hmm.
insert statement. So try to also analyze the error messages which comes here, so that you are handy when the error comes in when you are practicing. The insert statement conflicted with the check constraint, check cell. So there is a conflict with the check constant. What is the conflict? The conflict occurred in database default tutorial. Okay, this is the database name, table, employees, column, salary. So whatever the data you are trying to insert in this salary column, there is some conflict. What is the conflict? The insert statement conflicted with the check constant, check cell. So I have written that the salary must be greater than 10 and I am entering the salary as 9. So if I try to select the record, this wouldn't have been inserted. If I do a select star from, we will be covering the select part in much depth, because whole
Hmm.
tutorial is about the select queries. So right now just go with the query which I am writing. So there is
Hmm.
only one record, which is Nikhil Mittal. It has not inserted this record because there is a violation of the constraint.
Hmm.
So it has not inserted this record.
Hmm.
Any questions you have in this?
No.
Okay. And I can also mention a default constant. Default constant is a homework for you, so you have
Hmm.
to practice this default constant. And I just tell you what is default constant. For example, if I am not giving any value to any column, then it will take the default constant.
Okay.
You try this and we'll
Okay.
discuss in the next session. Have a research on the default constant and try to use this default constant. You can try this with the date time also. It
Hmm.
will be much feasible for you, date time, because you can check that if I have not inserted any date time, then let's suppose it gets a system date time.
Hmm.
Add constant. This is default date time.
Okay.
Okay, Sanjana, do you think that 2 hours will be too more, because you will not be able to grasp completely? So should we keep it to 1 hour?
Anyhow, I'm fine with both. I mean, anything, one or more.
Because I think to grasp all these concepts and you need to try all these things, I think 2 hours will be much more for you at the initial level. For
Hmm.
professionals, it is okay, 2 hours they can grasp it. But I think
Hmm.
we'll keep the session still 1 hour, 1.5 hour, or something like that. Till the time you are okay,
Okay.
we'll continue the session,
Hmm.
and because it will be too much for you to grasp at the initial level.
Hmm.
So I think no matter, it doesn't matter, we can extend it. Instead of 2 months, we can continue this on weekends in
Hmm.
3 months or 4 months also. That is not an issue, but let's keep it for 1 hour only.
Okay.
And I would like to cover this part at least a bit, so that when you are trying this for foreign keys and all this thing, default constant, so you will know this. So
Hmm.
because this I want to discuss in much depth, and it will require a knowledge of your foreign keys and all these things also.
Hmm.
So this is a simple select query, which is a select employee ID, order year, and count of num orders from where group by having order by. And
Hmm.
these clauses will be logically processed in below order. So I'll
Hmm.
discuss it in the next part, because I think it will be too much over for you, because if you start discussing the select part, we have discussed theory also, we have discussed the foreign keys also, so this will go over your head, because this is a too deep concept where you have to analyze the select query in complete depth. Okay.
Hmm. Okay.
So I will just end the recording of this session.